Welcome to the 1099 Prep Import Overview. In this video, we'll introduce you to the import process, including loading data and exporting data. 1099 Prep allows users to import data into the application, bypassing the need to manually enter tax information for larger customers. The process of importing data starts with a template file that is customized for 1099 Prep. This template defines the information needed, guiding users through the import of data with a focus on accuracy. Once the import process is completed, data can be exported for review or editing. Template download. Once the login process is completed, the company dashboard will be shown to provide a high-level overview of customers and corresponding forms. On the right-hand side of the company dashboard, there is a quick links section. You will see an option for templates. Note that if you navigate to the customer dashboard, the quick links remains in the same location, allowing access to the templates at any point in the filing process. When downloading a template, pick the Export Template option as the type of report and hit Run. The next step is to pick the options. As with reports, there is an optional name that can help identify the template for future use. If no name is provided, there will be a name generated for you. The required option for templates is the form. You can select one or more forms. The import process allows for multiple forms to be uploaded in a single template, but keep in mind that you need a different template for each customer. Once the options are selected, the template will be created. The history screen will show the status as the request is processed, and once the status is completed, the template will be available for download. This screen automatically refreshes, so the status will be updated as the request is processed. The options will show which forms were selected for that particular template. Once you have created the template for 1099 NEC, open the Excel file. At the top of the template, there are columns. These columns correspond to the form in the sheet name. The columns and the sheet name cannot be changed on the template since they are used to identify what data needs to be processed. Columns that are bolded designate required data based on the form. The next two rows provide instructions to guide users through the data entry process. The first row is the description for the column. The second row provides validation information that tells what will be valid or invalid for a particular column, along with the max length, and a reminder if the column is required. For all forms, the beginning of the template is the same. The first column is the customer name, which must match the customer name in 1099 Prep exactly. Keep in mind that a template can only be used for one customer. If imports are needed for multiple customers, prepare an import file for each customer. After the customer, the next set of columns are for the payer. These fields are shaded light gray. After the payer, the next set of columns are for the recipient. These fields are shaded light green. After the recipient, the next set of columns are for the form. These fields are shaded light blue. In this example, we are showing the 1099 NEC. Note the name at the bottom of the sheet. There is an account number field for each form. This field should remain blank for new data entry. If the goal is to edit an existing form, this field must be populated. The easiest way to accomplish this is with the export process, which will be described in a few minutes. For any columns that have a set of choices, the template will include additional sheets with the valid values. For the 1099 NEC, there will be a state and country sheet to help with the payer and recipient addresses. The name column is what will be used for data entry. The description provides context to help choose the correct value. Importing tax data. Now that we understand the template, we can walk through the import process. As mentioned above, a template can only be used for one customer. So the first step is to select the customer from the company dashboard. On the customer dashboard, the import action will be shown in the action panel on the left-hand side of the screen, assuming you have permissions for this action. Once you open the import module, you will see the file upload screen. You cannot delete from the import process. You will need to go into the customer dashboard to delete. The file must be Excel, and only one file is allowed at a time. However, that one file can have multiple sheets for different forms. If the wrong file was selected, use Delete to remove the file so you can add a new one. Once the file is selected, the next step is to Import File. This will open a confirmation dialog. Once confirmed, the process will begin and import history will open. The process may take several minutes, depending on the size of the file and number of forms. The import history screen will automatically refresh as the processing occurs. If you don't want to wait, you can leave the screen. There will be a notification at the bottom right corner of the screen when the import is completed. On the customer dashboard, the import action will also be used to review import history, import statuses, and resolving partial failures. Once the import is finished, the import history will display the status of the import. Ideally, the import is successful. At that point, all the data has been loaded into 1099 Prep and will be visible on the customer dashboard. If the import is not a success, there are two statuses, failure or partial. The import process loads payers, then recipients, then forms. If the row has an error later in the process, such as a form error, the payer and recipient may still be created. In the case of an error, do not download results. You will want to download the errors file. In the case of a partially successful import, this will just include the rows that had issues preventing duplicate data or confusing errors regarding attempted duplicate data. In the errors file, rows will have the issues highlighted. Scroll to find the error or errors and correct them based on the validation message. Once the errors are updated, rerun the import process. Repeat these steps until all rows have been imported. The results download will provide the data that was imported. All of the rows will be included, with the errors highlighted. Payers and recipients. If you're preparing 1099s before filing season, 1099 Prep allows you to import payers and recipients with no form data. Do not delete the form columns, just leave them blank. This will allow a head start in the filing process with 1099 Prep validating the payer and recipient data while still gathering form data. Rollover. There is a special type of import called rollover. This action is shown on the customer dashboard when the customer had accepted forms the previous year and there is no data in the current year. Clicking the rollover action will automatically pull payer and recipient data forward into the new tax year for the client. You can track the progress on import history. If there is data in the current year, or you only want to bring forward selected data, the export option will help in that scenario. Exporting data. On the customer dashboard, the export action will be shown in the action panel on the left-hand side of the screen, assuming you have permission for this action, and there is data in 1099 Prep for the selected customer. The export action will open a screen very similar to the Templates and Reports module. There are two types of exports, export and export prior year rollover. For exports, current year data will be exported. One or more payers can be selected. They will all be exported into the same file. Once the payers are selected, hit Run to go to the options screen. As with reports, there is an optional name that can help identify the template for future use. If no name is provided, there will be a name generated. One or more forms can be selected. They will all be exported into the same file, with one form per sheet. Status is also an option. The choices are all accepted and drafted. Choose the correct status based on the scenario. Drafted is best for editing, while accepted is best for record keeping. Once the options are selected, the export will be created. The history screen will show the status as the request is processed, and once the status is completed, the template will be available for download under the File column. This screen automatically refreshes, so the status will be updated as the request is processed. Export prior year rollover follows the same workflow, but it exports data from a prior year. As mentioned earlier, this can be useful if you want a head start on filing, but want to add or remove some payers or recipients. 1099 Prep is a multi-year system, and previous years can be selected. If you go back to the previous year, the action for exports is still available. This is useful for record-keeping purposes, but keep in mind the data is exported in that year's template and cannot be used in the current year. If the goal is to move data from last year forward, please use the rollover action. Import tips. Now here are some tips that will help with the import process. If you can't see notes on red shaded cells while resolving failures in a template file, ensure Protected View is not enabled in Microsoft Excel. Click Enable Editing to view notes. The column customer name is required in the template file and must exactly match the customer's name in 1099 Prep. The payer company name and recipient company name are required. If the form is for individual filings, the payer and recipient last name and first name fields are required. Please ensure these fields are populated. For 1042S, a payer is not required if a withholding agent is provided. When adding new forms, do not populate the account number field. This is auto-populated during the import process. When you export forms, the account number field will be populated. Do not delete or edit the account number, as it is required to process imports correctly. The recipient TIN is required in the template file, even if the recipient does not have a TIN number. If a recipient does not have a TIN, enter NA followed by 7 digits in the recipient TIN cell. If you leave the payer country and recipient country cells empty in the template file, a default value of US will be entered into the tax form field. If for some reason you need to specify another country beside the United States, enter the 2 digits country code in these fields. For any cell in a template file that requires a zip code, leading zeros will be automatically added in case there is a formatting issue in Excel where the leading zero is dropped. With the import and export data management process, 1099 Prep simplifies the filing process, empowering you to prepare, manage, and submit forms with confidence. For more tips and resources, check out our support portal, training materials, and quick links available to keep your filing on track.